your videographer Seer. Alright, with the gears I'm going to show you guys don't have to get exactly what I have. I will actually have some alternatives to the expensive stuff in the description, so let's get started. Alright, the first thing we're going to get started is actually my necklace, which is we got right here, so let's take a look at that. Alright, the necklace I got right here, which is a 5 yen from Japan. Alright, the reason why I have a coin as a necklace is because if you use tripods at all, you know that the part you put on your camera usually needs a tripod to tighten it. So when you're putting it on your camera, you can just take off your necklace and tighten it. And a lot of times while you're just shooting, it'll become loose, so you'll have to like find a quarter somewhere, and it's always hard to do. So to make it easy, I just have a 5 yen, and the reason why I'm using a 5 yen, it's not because I'm a weeb, but it's because 5 yens have a hole in the middle, so you can just put a chain around it and wear it on your neck, and when you need a coin, then you can just take it out, and then you can just tighten your camera, and boom, you're ready to go. Our second equipment we got is a Husky utility belt or a fanny pack, whatever you want to call it. This thing is super useful because while you're shooting, first of all, this has this big pouch in the middle, which means you can store your lenses on it while you're shooting. And if you're like me, you switch out of different lenses. So you can store up to 3 lenses on there. Well, actually 2 lenses, one on your camera. You keep them in there, and then when you need to swap out, you just take your lens out, take the cap out, put it in the other pouch, and boom, you're ready to go. You can also store other stuff in there, like you can store your cloth to clean your lens. I like to store my hex L-wrench keys on there to tighten up my rig, which we're going to talk more about once we're talking about the camera. A very important thing to keep inside of your belt is a bunch of business cards. Keep a bunch of business cards in there so that while you're working, if people come up to you and they're like, oh, I need to shoot my wedding or whatever, then you can just give them a business card and then follow up with them. This is a super important one, which is the monopod. Now, the monopod is, in my opinion, one of the most important pieces when shooting videos for events because it gets heavy to hold your camera the entire time when you're shooting for, 4 or 5 hours easily. So monopod makes it easier and allows you to get steadier shots with your camera, especially if you're shooting with a camera that doesn't have in-body stabilization. It just makes things a lot easier. So now let's talk about the camera gear. Alright, so when it comes to the camera I shoot the Sony a7R III. This is an expensive camera and you don't need to get a camera like this, but I do recommend you getting a mirrorless full-frame camera in 2020. So I would recommend getting something like an a7 III. I think it's around like $1,600 right now, which is quite a steal. So I would recommend full-frame camera. You don't have to get exactly what I have, but this is what I just like using. And the reason why I use this camera over my Sony FS5 that I'm shooting this with right now is because the autofocus on these newer Sony cameras is just amazing. It just makes life a lot easier when you're shooting events or if you're shooting weddings, because first of all, you're usually by yourself and while you're shooting, and there's so many things to keep in mind. You're framing the shot, zooming in and out. So just having the camera do the focusing for you, it just makes things a lot easier and it works great. But things that I don't use my camera like this, I actually rig it up. So let's rig up the camera. For rigging it up, I use the Small Rigs cage that we got right here. It's a half cage, which means that you can actually just get this mount for it. And you just grab it. And boom. Your camera is already rigged up, which is why I love this rig. Because you don't have to like unscrew stuff and everything. You just have it rigged up. And you just throw a lens on there. So we're going to talk about the lens in a second. And okay, here we go. And boom. So if I'm doing handheld shots, I can hold it with both hands like this, with this wooden grip that I got on this side. And if I need to do low shots, then I can use this top handle and just shoot like this from down low. It makes things a lot easier. And then at the bottom, I got a tripod mount at the bottom, so I can grab my monopod, and then I just have a tripod head on there, which I have links for all these in the description that you can check out. And then I'll put that there. And here we go. Now we went from handheld to monopod in a couple of seconds. Really easily done. Okay, let's take up the lens cap to make it look cooler. a smile for the thumbnail. Let's have a shot like this. And boom, there we go. Now we can do very steady shots. Just use the autofocus on it and get great video out of the camera. Alright, so when it comes to the lenses I use, there's 3 lenses that I really use, which we got right here is the Tamron 28-75mm lens. This is the lens I use mainly because it gives you that 28mm, which is pretty wide, which allows you to get those wide shots. And if you need to get a little bit of a close-up, then you can go to 75mm and get that. It has a constant f2.8 aperture, so in low light, it does a decent job. A lot of times if I'm shooting at like very low light situations, like if I'm shooting at a bar or a restaurant, I'll use fast primes. But if it's a scenario you haven't been in before and you're not familiar with the place, I recommend using a lens like this so that you're prepared for anything. It's just that if you use a faster prime, you're just going to get better image quality. So if what you're trying to do is plan, I would go with primes. But if you're going to be shooting an event where anything can happen, it's always better to just go with zoom lenses. The second lens I use is the Tamron 70-180mm lens. This is again another f2.8 aperture lens, which is super useful again for low light situations. But since this is a telephoto lens, it means that I'm going to be either farther away from people or I want to get those super close-ups with this lens. And also another cool thing about this lens specifically is that it's also a macro lens. So if I need to get any super close-ups of like if I'm shooting a wedding, for example, if I need to get a picture of the ring or whatever, this lens is quite useful for that. I actually made a review for this lens in the previous video, so make sure to check that out if you're interested in it. The third lens I have is kind of an emergency lens because I pretty much just use these 2 lenses only, which is the Samyang 14mm f2.8. Now this lens I rarely ever use, but I kind of keep it as an emergency if I do need to get like an ultra wide angle shot of anything. Like if I need to take like a big group picture and there's just no room to back up, then I'll use this lens. Normally, I don't like going ultra wide on a full frame camera. I personally don't like going wider than 35mm. Again, with the Tamron, I can go up to 28mm, but that's like the furthest I want to push it with full frame. Because from my experience, once you go below 35mm, then you start adding distortion to your image and things start looking weird. I just don't think it looks that good. So personally, I just kind of have this as an emergency. I know a lot of people like to get like a 16-35mm lens, and you'll be better off getting a lens like that over this. But I just bought this lens because this lens is pretty cheap. I think I got it for like $200 or $300. So for me, it's an emergency lens. I don't like going this wide, but if you do, then you can get a better version of it. But if you're like me, you don't like going too wide, then this is a good lens to just have in your bag for emergencies. Now, if you're going to be shooting indoors in low light, another thing you can use is just use an LED light on top of your camera. Right here, I got a pretty old, newer CN160 LED light. And I got this years ago, so nowadays there's better ones that actually have RGB on them. This is straight up just a white LED light. But the cool thing about this light is that it takes NP batteries. So I can just have this like giant NP battery that I can put on there. And I'm pretty much good for the whole day with this light. And boom. I just got some lights right here and I can like blind myself. It's pretty cool. And I just grabbed this, and this is one of the reasons why I like using a rig, is because I can just attach this light on top of it, and I know that's going to be secure. And boom, now we got some light on top of our camera. I personally don't like using a light that much while I'm shooting, because having a direct light in front of your subject is not the best look, but sometimes you're just shooting in really dark conditions, so it's better to just have a direct light instead of just bumping up the ISO so much that your picture just ends up being overly grainy. So this is the getup right here. We get our camera, we get our light on the top. I'm gonna turn this off, this is kind of distracting. But we get our light on top. We get a second culture right here on the grip, so if we need to add a microphone to it, we can just put it right up here, so it's really cool. And we got our monopod, of course, with the camera on it. I can adjust it however I want. And this is a really cheap monopod that I got right here, which is an Amazon Basics monopod. I think it's around like $20 or something. I'll have a link for it in the pinned comments, not the description, in the pinned comments. But that's that. And I also have my belt, fanny pack, whatever you want to call it, on my waist. And if I need to switch any lenses, I can easily just take this off right here and grab my lens from my belt and then just swap out the back and the front parts right here. Put the lens on here. I swear it's easier than how it looks right now. Boom. Put this back on my belt and boom, I'm ready to shoot wide now. Works great. I also have my Peak Design strap right here. I usually keep it around my neck so that if I have to let go of the camera, it can choke me out from the behind and I'll just die, and then they'll feel bad for me and pay me more money. If I also have to go handheld, what I can do is I can just take this off from here, from the tripod head. Boom. And then I can just store this right on my belt. Just like a sword. Boom. And I got it right here, just hanging by my belt, as if I'm using a sword. It looks really cool. And then you can take it off. If they don't want to pay you, just grab this and you can just smack people over the head with it. You can also like just extend this and do like some cool tricks for like the kids at the party, you know. Oh god, this room is way too small. But you can do some cool stuff with it, you know. You can just be like, I'm a samurai. This is what samurais do back in 1987. And then you can just put it back on your belt. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. I make videos every single week, so make sure to subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.